Good afternoon, everyone. We will wait just a minute or so while everyone gets logged into Zoom for the webinar. Thank you. Welcome to our webinar on Universal Pre-Kindergarten or UPK implementation, where we'll be focusing this afternoon on community engagement and partnerships held by the Early Education Division today on February 24th, 2022. We are recording this webinar and we'll be posting it to our website. We will post this on the elementary page near where our template is posted. We'll drop that link in the chat for you right now. We will use CDE Today to share out when the webinar recording is available. If you are not currently subscribed to CDE Today, you can sign up by sending a blank email to join-cde@mlist.cde.ca.gov. You can find recent archived versions of CDE Today in the CDE newsroom. We'll put those links in the chat for you now. Next slide. Thank you. To help answer your questions, we have a big team with us, so I'd like to introduce myself and our team. My name is Jennifer Osalbo, and I work here in the policy office at the Early Education Division, EED, in the California Department of Education. I will be your moderator today. To help answer your questions and make this webinar run smoothly, we have a great team here with us today. From the Opportunities for All branch, OFAB, we have Sarah Neville Morgan, our Deputy Superintendent, Lily Moffitt, and Teresa Maldonado. From the Child Care and Development Division at the California Department of Social Services, we have Nadira Jones. From the Special Education Division, we have Katie Maloney Cripps and Barbara Boyd. From the Expanded Learning Division, we have Sterling Williams and Jen Taylor. From the Nutrition Services Division, we have Tara Mass. From the Director's Office at the Early Education Division, we have Stephen Profiter, Brianne Rude, and Sarah Dawson. Also from the Policy Office, we have Virginia Early, Ben Allen, Eddie Tanimoto, and Mai Tao. From Early Education System Support, we have Sheila Self, Alana Pinsler, and Olivia Demares. From the Program Quality Implementation or PQI Office, we have Crystal Devlin and Richard Miller, and our 2 American Sign Language or ASL interpreters this afternoon are Jesse Martinez and Kimberly Nobrigla. I also want to warmly mention our Technology Services Division, who ensures that our Zoom link is live and is working for our webinars. They help ensure that there is closed captioning available for you to utilize during the webinar. To turn it on, you can click the CC button on the bottom right of your screen. Our team is committed to being responsive as possible and will not be able to answer every question. Just a reminder, our chat box is disabled. CDE will be able to share links with you there, but you are unable to chat with us. Please utilize the Q&A feature to ask us questions. Any questions that we weren't able to get to today will be used to inform future FAQs on our website. To ask a question during this webinar, you can use the Q&A feature of Zoom. Please do give us as much detail as possible before clicking that submit button. For example, which pre-kindergarten program are you asking about? What kind of LEA or community-based organization do you represent? Early learning and care contract type, age of students, etc. Also, we have noticed in some of our division webinars, that there are some questions submitted that are incomplete. Please don't feel the need to rush to get your question in the queue. It's okay to take a moment to accurately type out your questions before you click send. I'll now pass it over to Sarah Neville Morgan, the Deputy Superintendent of the Opportunities for All branch at CDE. Sarah?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm actually going to stand in for Sarah for the next couple of slides. If we can get the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So to launch us, I'm Stephen Proctor. To launch us off today, we wanted to talk with you about why early learning matters, since this is the research that motivates us to do our work. First of all, brain science shows that 90% of a child's brain growth happens by 5 years old. Research also shows that early intervention is more effective in terms of cost and health than later remediation. For example, participation in pre-K leads to statistically significant reductions in child education placement. Preschool prepares children for school and kindergarten. Preschool has long-term impacts on school progress, graduation, and future life outcomes. Preschool has enduring benefits that do not fade. Overall, from the research, we know that we get these benefits when we support investment in and implementation of quality programs. If we can go back to the previous slide, it looks like I missed an item here. Thank you very much. One more slide, please. Thank you. So we did want to welcome you all to our second UPK webinar. We are excited to engage with you all today and answer some of your questions. Many of you have been coming to our pre-kindergarten through grade 3 or P2 alignment webinars over the last couple of months, where we've been including discussions about UPK, along with other historic investments such as expanded learning opportunities program, dual immersion programs, and universal meals. We heard from many of you at our last UPK webinar that you wanted to dive deeper into community engagement and partnerships around planning for UPK. So to help you with that, we'll start today with a quick review of the research, which we just covered, since really this research is our North Star in this work. Understanding the research that we just covered helps us message the why behind UPK, as well as understanding the types of programs we can implement, which then in turn can help generate ideas around how to work together as a community to meet these goals. We'll next go into some aspects around UPK implementation and the timeline to help you grasp our shared goal more, and then dive into the role of various community agencies and others you can partner with to support UPK planning and implementation, how to leverage programs providing direct services to children to support the full day for UPK, and some models for layering programs to meet family needs. Throughout all of this, we still want to emphasize the opportunity to transform our educational system by integrating these historic investments so they truly weave together to create the optimal educational experience for California students, starting with our preschoolers. We also want to emphasize that these investments in quality pre-K need to be embedded within a P3 frame to capitalize on the learning and outcomes that doing all this well requires new partnerships between and among local education agencies, state preschools, expanded learning, Head Start, private preschool, and other learning and care programs. That partnership is the focus of today's webinar. And if we can go forward 2 slides, please. Perfect. So as we think about preschool programs, not all preschool programs are created equal. And we know that the quality of the early learning experiences children receive matters. And that starts with the teachers and administrators. Research finds that preschool programs that demonstrate the strongest and most persistent positive effects employ well-qualified educators and pay them a livable wage commensurate with their experience and the importance of their work. They need to use a developmentally informed program. Curricular choice and fidelity of implementation are key. Research suggests that comprehensive curricula that have been marketed to programs as able to do it all actually are not linked to child outcomes. Domain-specific curricula that focus on literacy or math, for example, have much stronger evidence of effectiveness. And they provide adequate learning time for students, such as full-day programs and programs that offer 2 or more years of early learning opportunities. In this, we want to stress that mealtime is learning time for young children. It supports relationship building and is often related to culture. As such, it also needs adequate time and planning. Environments are also critical. Young children need scaffolded, intentional instruction that is embedded into playful activities that are developmentally informed and environments designed to sustain and nourish children's natural curiosity and passion for learning. Programs also should set clear expectations for educators' knowledge and skills, support teachers to reach those expectations, and establish mechanisms for ongoing program improvement. And I'll end with how critical P3 alignment across curriculum, instruction, assessments, and professional learning is to ensure the boost provided by high-quality pre-K is maintained and built off in the next few grades. The transition to and quality of the early elementary grades is critical in accelerating children's development rather than contributing to children's disengagement from school. And now I'd like to hand it over to some of our colleagues and friends from the Special Education Division. Barbara and Katie, over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. To the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities should be educated with their non-disabled peers, and they should not be removed from regular classes unless the nature or severity of the student's disability is such that education in general or in regular classes, with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Research demonstrates that enrolling children in inclusive early learning settings can help reduce the need for future special education services. It can decrease long-term special education costs and increase student academic achievement. Research also shows that children with disabilities can make significant developmental and learning progress when appropriately placed in inclusive settings. Also, same-age peers without disabilities, they show positive development, social, and attitudinal outcomes from inclusive experiences. And now, back to our moderator, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So thank you for that compelling information on why quality matters and the benefits of inclusion. So now that we've introduced ourselves and heard about the why behind UPK, we wanted to launch a poll to get to know who's in the room with us. Soon a poll with 2 questions should be popping up in your Zoom. The 2 questions are asking, in what area of the state are you located? And the second one is, what is your title or role in the UPK system? So with the first question about where you're located, you can consider the California County Superintendent's Educational Services Association, or CSESA regions. So considering those, the options are Northern California, regions 1 and 2, which is in the picture in orange. Greater Sacramento is regions 3 and 6 in blue. Bay Area Coastal Region, regions 4 and 5 are in purple. The Central Valley is in region 7, which is depicted in green. The Inland Empire is region 10 or yellow. And Southern California are regions 8, 9, and 11 in red, according to the map. Other options in the survey are statewide or serving multiple areas, but not statewide or other. In question 2, the different titles and roles are County Office of Education staff, school district administrator, school district or central office staff, SELPA staff, teacher or site support staff, other staff providing direct service in early education, higher education staff, charter or private school staff, or other. If you are calling into this Zoom call, I'm sorry you will not have access to the polls. We still appreciate your presence, and you or anyone can send other questions to our email box at upk@cde.ca.gov. The CSESA regions, if you are interested, can also be found at http://ccsesa.org/regions. Okay, so we can close our poll. And share the results. And so a lot of people are from Southern California. 42% of you are from Southern California. 19% of the people are from the Bay Area. And then for roles, it looks like 25% of you are district administrators and 23% are other, and 10% are other staff providing direct service in early education. Thank you so much for sharing those polls, Bree. And next I'll hand it off to Stephen Profiter.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jennifer. So to help us with this conversation around UPK partnerships and collaboration around the implementation of UPK, we wanted to briefly start with a review of that implementation. Next slide, please. So we come back, you may have seen this slide before. We come back to it because we still hear folks wondering what UPK is. So we thought we'd quickly review it as a starting place. UPK stands for Universal Pre-Kindergarten, which by 2025-26 will exist for all 4-year-old children in California. Some people may think that Universal Transitional Kindergarten, or UTK, and UPK are the same thing. So we wanted to clarify, or perhaps remind, of how we're thinking about it at CDE and how LEAs are being asked to think of it as they work on their UPK implementation plans to submit for consideration to their governing board by June 30th, 2022. UTK is part of UPK, but it's not the only part. UPK is a mixed delivery system that will bring together programs across early learning and K-12. While it's relying heavily on UTK, it also includes the California State Preschool Program, which the CDE operates, along with other pre-kindergarten programs serving 3- and 4-year-old children, including the Federal Head Start program, subsidized programs that offer a preschool learning experience and are operated by community-based organizations, or CBOs, including family childcare, and private preschool. Part of UPK is also the Expanded Learning Opportunities program that provides children in TK through 6th grade a full day access to a full day program aligned with the needs to parents. As part of UPK, we want to ensure families have a meaningful choice for programs and can support the needs of children and equitable access to these opportunities. As we look at the first part of UPK and UTK universal, universal means that by 2025-26, by that school year, regardless of background, race, zip code, immigration status, or income level, every child has access to a quality learning experience the year before kindergarten. California law is very clear that families with 4-year-old children will have the choice in which pre-K program to send their 4-year-old child to if they would like to enroll their child in a pre-K program. Just because a child is eligible for TK does not mean that the child has to be enrolled in TK. They can be enrolled in any of the other programs based on their preferences, or none at all. California law is also very clear that LEAs must plan for UPK, including thinking through these other ways UPK can be provided beyond TK and how UPK can create that access to a full day of learning before kindergarten. As a result, that's why CDE is using language around UPK, since just planning around TK does not address all the areas where LEAs are being asked to plan under state law, or really what families need. We'll talk more about this specific requirement and more detailed guidance later in this webinar. And if I can have the next slide, please. So how do transitional kindergarten, UPK, and P3, which we talked about at the top of the webinar, how do those all work together? So TK is an integral program for mixed delivery system for achieving UPK. It is also the only program that must serve any 4-year-old child that wants to enroll by 2025-26. As we've said, UPK is the mixed delivery system that includes TK, CSPP, Head Start, and expanded learning, including private early learning and care providers, and more that we've covered. As we discussed, it provides every 4-year-old child with access to high quality learning the year before kindergarten. P3, as we look at the larger circle here, is overarching work that CDE is leading to support LEAs to connect the work they're doing across the UPK, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grades. So there's a seamless continuum for students during their early years in the educational system. P3 also focuses on aligning developmentally informed best practices in UPK through 3rd grade. Next slide, please. We wanted to show you a visual here of how UPK implementation will work over the scheduled implementation period for TK and early admittance TK. So to start, let's better define early admittance TK, or ETK for you. ETK includes TK for children that LEAs can choose to include in their enrollment, but are not required to include. And a child in ETK is a child that turns 5 during the school year after the TK age eligibility cutoff. LEAs can choose to serve children in ETK if they wish from the beginning of the school year, but the child would not generate average daily attendance, or ADA, until their 5th birthday. The chart here provides a visual that based on the birthdays of children, the cohorts and school years across the UPK implementation period. So for children who do not qualify for TK or ETK, CSPP, the California State Preschool Program, or locally funded programs can serve these children, which is labeled other in this chart, as you see kind of along the bottom row there. In the current school year, in 2021-22, eligibility for TK includes students turning 5 years old between September 2nd and December 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between December 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK, though the district doesn't generate funding for these students until their 5th birthday. Children with birthdays between July 1 and September 1 can be served in another preschool program, for example, CSPP, Head Start, or a locally funded program. In 2022, pardon me, in 2022-23, TK students are eligible if they turn 5 years old between September 2nd and February 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between February 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK. Rules for children with birthdays between July 1 and September 1 remain the same. Also this year, ratios are modified to a 1:12 adult to child ratio and a class size of 24. In 2023-24, TK students are eligible if they turn 5 between September 2nd and April 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between April 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK. Rules for children with birthdays between July 1 and September 1 remain the same. Also this year, ratios are modified to a 1:10 ratio, subject to future legislative appropriation, and class size remains 24. In 2024-25, TK students are eligible if they turn 5 between September 2nd and June 2nd. At district discretion, children turning 5 between June 3rd and the end of the school year can be included in ETK, and then rules for children with birthdays between July 1 and September 1 remain the same. And finally, in 2025-26, all children are eligible if they turn 5 by September 1. Because TK is fully implemented, then ETK will not exist at this point. Ratios are 1:10, subject to future legislative appropriation, with a class size of 24. For the first time, children with birthdays between July 1 and September 1 can be served in TK. And I'm actually going to ask and see if somebody from the team can pick up on slide 12, as it seems I have lost my visual connection to Zoom.
All right, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, so thank you so much, Steve. So I'll take us from here. So wanting to flag for everyone that part of UPK implementation is around our California State Preschool Program, or CSPP expansion. So wanting to flag for you all that we'll be releasing a request for applications very soon for this. So we look forward to sharing that with you. That will be released very soon, in a matter of days. And we'll be sharing this with everyone through our early education division and our P3 email distribution list. There's also 130, of this is 130 million, which is of these expansion funds, are available to LEAs for both part day, part year, and full day, full year state preschool. LEAs can apply to provide direct center-based state preschool services. They can subcontract services with another entity, including community-based organizations, or they can provide services through a family childcare home education network, or FETCHN. And we'll have an instructional webinar so you can learn more about how to apply once the RFA is released. And we'll also announce that webinar through our early education division and P3 email distribution list as well. Next slide. So another piece of UPK implementation that we want to flag for you is that we received some feedback on the initial allocations for our 200 million UPK planning and implementation grant, which are there to support a UPK implementation. And after the feedback on those allocations, we determined that it was necessary to update the allocations to count for things like some merged school districts, charter schools that became district schools that became charter schools, and some district name changes. So we are very close to having those updated allocations put on our website on those funding results pages. And once those are posted, we will be moving the apportionment package through CDE so that LEAs can get the right amount of funding. So the allocations have changed slightly, not significantly. And so the total amount that's going for the UPK P&I grant and the countywide and capacity grant have slightly changed. So there's 175.5 million for the UPK P&I grant and 24.5 million for the UPK P&I countywide and capacity grant. Another support that's there for UPK implementation is the 100 million competitive early education teacher development grant. This grant had a mandatory letter of intent that was due February 2nd at 5 p.m. So did you or an LEA you know submit an eligible letter of intent or LOI by February 2nd at 5 p.m. You can check on the RFA's webpage, and we'll put the link, I just put the link in the chat, thank you, to see who submitted an eligible LOI. Now, our team is going to be releasing a request for funding request for applications very shortly. So we know that you are all eager and working on the different aspects of this and want to get started. When it's released, the RFA will be on that link that we shared earlier. But in the meantime, we encourage LEAs to reread the statute. So we'll be putting the link to the language, which starts at 8281.5, paragraph D1. And we just put that in the chat so you can see it. So while only LEAs that submitted an eligible letter of intent can apply to the RFA, we do encourage those who didn't submit a letter of intent to join together with an LEA that did submit one in a consortia. So that's another reason why we have that listing of LEAs who did submit on that RFA page to support and encourage those consortia members. We also want to flag that LEAs will be getting the UPK P&I grant allocation through that apportionment process, as I mentioned earlier. And those apportionment funds can be used for several purposes, but are not limited to hiring and recruitment costs, staff training, professional development, and other workforce needs your LEA may have. For any questions about the Early Education Teacher Development Grant, you can send an email to upkworkforcerfa@cde.ca.gov. And I will notice that, I think, Steve, do you want me to keep going or do you want to take back over? It looks like you may have rejoined us. All right, I
think continue, please. Yep.
We're having some technical issues today, the joys of webinars, but also such a great way to be able to connect with all of you. So thank you all for bearing with us as we navigate these. So in terms of our UPK guidance, we talked with you on our first webinar about the template and the required and recommended planning questions. So today we're going to be spending some time on some of the items from a guidance document that we released that went live on February 14th, our Valentine's present to all of you, and corresponds to the template for local education agencies as you work to implement TK. So both the template and volume 1 of the guidance can be found at the link that Mai just put in the chat. And you can also find the guidance on California Educators Together, which we'll put the link in the chat to that one as well. So the first round of guidance includes, and for those, if it's helpful, I'll read the link on the slide. So the link is https://www.cde.ca.gov/ci/gs/em. So this first round, or volume 1 of the UPK Planning and Implementation Guidance, includes information on the following. So there's a guidance introduction and some general information, which includes California's P3 vision, research on why early education matters, and other critical information about different elements of UPK. There are pieces around projected enrollment and needs assessment, which includes key considerations, description of enrollment data and projections, and transitional kindergarten and kindergarten enrollment projection methodology. Then we have guidance on different focus areas. So focus area A, there's guidance around vision and coherence, which includes models for UPK service delivery, including and inclusive settings, guidance related to part and full day programs, state preschool standards and expansion, early admittance TK, models for blending programs, including funding sources, and offering extended learning and care, as well as some ELOP guidance. For focus area B, there's a focus on guidance around community engagement partnerships, which we'll be talking about more today, including opportunities to engage communities in UPK planning. And then for focus area E, and I know we've already gotten some questions on this, LEA facilities, services, and operations, including facility requirements and resources. So we'll be diving deeper with you on community engagement and partnerships today, but we want to make sure you know what is in this critical resource as you dive deeper into your planning work. So as part of this, the CDE has developed some projected needs and assessment. We've developed enrollment projections for some LEAs, and those LEAs should have received emails with those projections earlier this week on Tuesday, February 22nd. We are not able to provide projection models for every LEA receiving the UPK Planning and Implementation Grant Funds. Specifically, projections could not be performed for LEAs if there are a couple situations that we're operating. So the first situation is where LEA's National Center for Education Statistics ID is not included in crosswalk files curated by the Missouri Census Data Center, which were relied upon to aggregate zip code level counts of births to LEAs. We were also not able to do the projections if the LEA was a non-district charter and couldn't be reliably linked to birth counts in a particular attendance area because school attendance boundaries are not available or do not reliably correspond to the geographic area for which birth counts are available. That would be zip code census tabulation area. Or the LEA had 0 TK enrollment from 2016-17 to 2018-19. So as a result, some of you should have received an email without projected figures explaining that the CD was unable to come up with figures to give you. If you have not received any email, please email us at upk@cde.ca.gov. And just a note on these, that these figures are provided as one tool for LEAs to consider when developing their TK and kindergarten enrollment projections. And you can find more information on this in the UPK Planning and Implementation Guidance, along with key considerations on projected enrollment and needs assessment, a description of data, and a projections methodology memo. So as we move into our next slide, we all know that a key part of providing UPK is providing full day and full year programs that meet family needs, especially for working families. So statute requires LEAs to plan for how all 4-year-old children in their attendance area will have full day programs the year before kindergarten that meet family needs if they choose to access them. These needs can be met through a variety of programs providing rich early learning and care, including TK, CSPP, Head Start, other early learning and care programs, expanded learning, private preschool, and more. So having different UPK models builds capacity to provide high quality programs that support child outcomes. And it also allows families meaningful choice while providing equitable opportunities. To do this, you will find it really important to meaningfully engage with community agencies and partners, creating strong collaborative relationships to assist in your local planning and implementation efforts to meet your unique needs in your community while uplifting that equity and access. So we'll now move over into some deeping diving here into roles of community agencies and partners. Let's think through how that can support you as you work on UPK implementation. So starting off with this, as we go into our next slide, county offices of education, or COEs, have a very strong role to play in supporting the implementation of UPK. They're receiving funding to support countywide planning and capacity building around UPK. So as part of this, county offices of education should be helping LEAs in their county with planning and supporting countywide planning and capacity building around UPK. So this includes, but isn't limited to, helping LEAs think through which community partners to engage and how, based on the unique needs and characteristics of their county, helping convene LEAs and community-based organizations to support conversations around how full-day pre-K opportunities can be provided to all children the year before kindergarten, and also potentially supporting county conversations around serving 3-year-old children, since to the extent that more 4-year-old children are served in TK, that will open more spaces in programs like CSPP and Head Start for 3-year-old children. So there are a number of opportunities to engage with communities, both at the school site level, the LEA level, and the community level. So you can see more on this as you look at our guidance, starting on page 86 of the guidance document and focus area B. And some of these include, at the school site level, you can hold meetings with your parent-teacher association or PTA, English Learner Advisory Committee or ELAC, and the school site council. At the LEA level, this could be meetings with your special education local plan area or SELPA, community advisory committee, and then those local control accountability plan input sessions for your LCAP, as well as tribal community input sessions. There are also, as we go into our next slide, many community level opportunities for community engagement with partners for early education planning. So this list includes, but is not limited to, programs like the resource and referral agencies, which are administered at the state level by DSS, and local planning councils, which Nadira from DSS will talk about in more detail shortly. It also means looking at First 5 county commissions, where in each county, local First 5 works to create a comprehensive and integrated delivery system of information and services to promote early childhood development, support parenting education, child health and wellness, early care and education, family and support services, and educating Californians about importance of early childhood development and smoking cessation. We also have Quality Counts California, which supports local quality improvement efforts, family empowerment centers, which are parent-led nonprofits that provide training and information to families of children and young adults with disabilities between the ages of 3 and 22. And then Head Start Policy Councils, which are groups of Head Start and Early Head Start parents and community members who are elected by the parents of children enrolled in the program. We'll go into a couple of these in the next slides, and you can learn more in our guidance document. And so, Nadira, I'll hand off to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nadira Jones, and I'll be giving you a little information about some of the programs that were just mentioned. So this slide, I'm going to introduce the Child Care Resource and Referral Programs. So the R&Rs are, which we call them for short, the Resource and Referral Programs are also known as the R&Rs, they're mandated by the Child Care and Development Block Grant Act, and the Child Care and Development Fund. And they're also mandated by the Welfare Institution Codes. Currently, there are 69 locally based R&Rs located throughout California, and we also have one Child Care Resource and Referral Network. The California Resource and Referral Network supports the R&Rs in their capacity and supports them at the local levels. Some of the major responsibilities of the R&Rs are providing information for families with children based on their specific needs, along with other support services that families may need. They also support the recruiting and training of the child care providers. Additionally, they are also mandated to collect data from parents and from child care providers. So I'm going to go to the next slide. The next program I'm going to talk about is the local planning councils, which we refer to them as LPCs. And LPCs are mandated by the Welfare Institution Code, and their primary responsibilities include they need to provide a forum for the identification of local priorities for childcare and the development of policies to meet the needs identified within those priorities. They also are responsible every year by May 30th to submit the child care to the California Department of Social Services and to the California of Education, their local priorities, which are used to determine the needs at the local levels for subsidized childcare. Additionally, they also are charged with conducting a needs assessment of the childcare needs locally, and that is done primarily no less than every 5 years. So that is a little bit about both of those programs, and I'm going to pass the presentation on to the next presenter.
All right, thank you so much, Nadira. So a little thing to help you make these connections and start thinking about how these existing systems can be leveraged with the resources that county offices of education are receiving to support county-wide planning and implementation. We want to flag for you that county offices of education are already heavily engaged in many of these spaces. This means that if you're a district or a charter that needs help thinking through how to partner, we highly encourage you to reach out to your local county office of education for support. So out of the 58 county offices of education in the state, currently 41 provide TK. 38 of them have state preschool contracts, so they can help think through about how to utilize CSPP funds and programs to leverage UPK. 50 of them are the lead for the local planning council in their community. So these groups plan for childcare and development services, as Nadira mentioned, based on the needs of families. 15 of them house their county's resource and referral agency, as Nadira just discussed, which can help families find childcare and preschool. And over 30 county offices lead Quality Counts California in their counties. This one is a bit different because a few counties combine together and some county offices of education join with First Five and or their local planning council to jointly lead. And as we mentioned before, Quality Counts California Consortia are statewide improvement initiative to ensure a consistently high quality early care and education experience for children birth to 5. And then for CSPP and preschool specifically, even more county offices of education are involved in QCC. And we'll put some links in the chat on this for you. As we look at how we can, let's look more at how we can leverage programs that are providing direct services to children. To do this well, we want to start by explaining some basics about programs that can be leveraged beyond TK. So as we move into our next slide, early learning and care is both a component of UPK and goes beyond UPK. So it refers to the continuum of programs serving children from birth to preschool or school entry, as well as those extended care opportunities that support school-age children with before and after school care and vacation schedules. These include state preschool, general child care, early Head Start, community-based early learning and care programs, as well as family child care providers and family friend and neighbor care. So to start, let's review some state-funded early learning and care programs, which this slide you can see some of the names of them. The contract acronyms for them, since everyone loves acronyms to help you understand if someone uses an acronym, which one they're talking about. And the way state funds the programs, and then a brief description of who is served by these programs. So we've already talked about the California State Preschool Program, or CSCP. That's a program that CDE directly contracts with local education agencies and community-based organizations to operate. So it's a direct contract, and it provides pre-K to 3- and 4-year-old children and expanded learning to TK and K students. Then there's General Child Care, or CCTR, and that's a program where DSS directly contracts with LEAs and community-based organizations to operate, and it provides childcare to children aged 0 to 12. The California Migrant Center Program, or CMIG, is another direct contract program operated by DSS, and that provides childcare to children 0 to 12 from migrant families. Then we have the CalWORKs Child Care Programs, which has 3 stages with varying acronyms, and that's also administered by DSS. And DSS funds local agencies to make payments on behalf of enrolled families to child care providers of the parent's choice. So this funding model is generally referred to as a voucher model, even though the local agency, and that might be a county welfare department or an alternative payment agency, like a county office of education, is making payments on behalf of the families to providers on the private market. And this program, CalWORKs, provides childcare to children birth to 12 from families participating in CalWORKs. There's the California Alternative Payment Program, or CAP, which is another voucher program DSS administers for non-CalWORKs families with children birth to 12. And then the California Migrant Alternative Payment Program, or CMAP, which is another voucher program DSS administers for non-CalWORKs families. This provides childcare to children birth to 12 from migrant families. In addition to the state-funded programs that you see on this slide, as we move to the next slide, you'll see that we also have federal Head Start programs. Head Start is federally administered program that provides grants directly to organizations in local communities to provide programs that promote school readiness of infants, toddlers, and preschool-age children from low-income families. And services are provided in a variety of settings, including centers, family child care, and children's own homes. Head Start also provides comprehensive services such as developmental and health screenings that are included in the performance standards. There's a lot there, so we'll put a link in the chat for more information. So we talked through diving deeper into the California State Preschool Program. We talked through CSPP eligibility criteria at a high level on our last CPK webinar, but we wanted to go a little deeper with you all today on CSPP eligibility criteria based on current law to help you think through how to leverage CSPP to support your UPK efforts. So one thing we want to flag before we go too deep here is that this is current law and that the governor's budget is actually proposing to modify these eligibility criteria to allow for more children to be served with exceptional needs without regards to income and some other pieces. So just note that these are current law. And as things change, we'll make sure that we share that with the field. So this is all found in Education Code section 8208. And that states that 3- and 4-year-old children, as well as TK and kindergarten age children who may be getting expanded learning and care through CSPP, are eligible for part and full day state preschool if the child's family meets one of several requirements. So they could be a cash aid recipient, income eligible, and that means income below 85% of the state median income. So that's about $78,000 for a family of 3 this year, in case that's helpful. Or they could be homeless. They could have children who receive child protective services or are identified as being abused, neglected, or exploited, or at risk of being abused, neglected, or exploited. And also, programs can also serve children without regards to income who live within and attend a program operating within the attendance boundaries of a school where 80% or more of pupils are eligible for free or reduced price meals. So there are also some additional things that applies only to part day state preschool. So children from families with income slightly above the income threshold can be enrolled in specific circumstances. And children with exceptional needs with income above the eligibility threshold can also be enrolled. So as we move to our next slide, as we've been talking about, part of this UPK system includes expanded learning and care. So expanded learning includes before school, after school, summer or intersession learning programs that focus on developing the academic, social, emotional, and physical needs and interests of pupils through hands-on engaging learning experiences. So it's been the intent of the legislature that expanded learning programs are pupil-centered, results-driven, include community partners, and complement but don't replicate learning activities that happen during the regular school day and school year. So there are several programs here. The Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or ELOP, provides funding for after-school and summer school enrichment programs for TK through the 6th grade. The ELOP is defined as services provided in addition to the normal school day and school year operations to provide full day and full year expanded learning programs to meet the needs of working families whose children are enrolled in TK through 6th grade, and also provide expanded learning enrichment programming for students. A full day is defined as in-person before or after school expanded learning opportunities that, when it's added to daily instructional minutes, are no fewer than 9 hours of combined instructional time. There's also the After School Education and Safety, or ACES, and 21st Century Community Learning Centers. Those are both ELOPs and can also be used to provide extended learning and care opportunities for UPK. Head Start, CSPP, and early learning and care providers, as we talked about before, can also contribute to this fabric of extended and expanded early learning and care. So I'm now going to pass it off to Steve.
Wonderful. Thank you, Virginia, and I appreciate your flexibility earlier. It seems I am back up with Zoom and with all of you. It's good to be back. So with this, the context in mind that Virginia just covered, we want to now discuss models for layering programs to meet family needs. Next slide, please. So as we think about the guidance and we look at the guidance at the end of Focus Area A, at the end of Focus Area A, There's a table that includes funding sources that can be used to provide or assist with extended learning and care services outside of the transitional kindergarten instructional day. This slide here shows a list of programs with funding available to help with UPK implementation and planning. So first there's TK, which, as you know, is one of the main programs for UPK. And there's the California State Preschool Program expansion and existing contracts, and the expanded learning programs, which we've also covered. The Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA funds. These are federal dollars to support equal opportunities for students. There is also community schools. These investments will help you think about how to support a holistic experience that supports students so that they can best learn, and community schools investments are a key part of that that can be integrated into UPK planning and implementation. There's also the Universal Meals Program, California being the first state to implement a statewide Universal Meals Program for all students. And then finally, the sampling here, subsidized childcare funding. Many of which are housed or administered by the California Department of Social Services. So as you look at these different sources of funding, you should be planning in such a way that isn't siloed and is rather coherent. You leverage the skills, the knowledge, and the experience of your internal and external partners. For more information on these funding opportunities, you can refer to page 80 of the guidance document, which Virginia shared, and I think we've got links in the chat too from the CDE website as well as the California Educators Together website. Next slide, please. So, in order to think about layering to achieve a full day of UPK that meets the needs of families, it's important to understand the definitions of part day and full day for TK. So part day is a minimum of 3 hours, no more than 4 hours of instruction per day, including recess if it's under the jurisdiction of a certificated employee, and excluding lunch, for a total of 36,000 instructional minutes total over a school year. These programs provide the ability to stack classes with 2 sessions per day to serve more children with limited facilities. Full day is more than 4 hours a day if you are if they're operating as part of an early primary program as defined in Education Code, specifically section 8971. We cover more about this in our guidance, in the guidance document that we've got in the chat here. These programs are supportive of working families and maximize student learning opportunities. Providing a full day can be accomplished through partnerships with the California State Preschool Program, Head Start, expanded learning programs, and other early learning and care programs. And as a reminder, it's allowable for LEAs to operate kindergarten programs that have a different length of day than their TK programs if they operate an early primary program. So going back to that section, that part of Education Code where in section 8971 lives. This means that children in TK can have a longer day than a child enrolled in kindergarten, if that meets the needs of parents. In the UPK plans for governing boards, LEAs are required to plan for full day learning programs that meet the needs of parents. If LEAs have the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program funds, full day means at least 9 hours, inclusive of before, after, and during instruction, after school and during instructional time. And the 9 hours, of course, as I mentioned, is would be inclusive then of the TK school day hours. So if TK funds are only going to support part day TK, LEAs will need to think through as part of their plans which other funding sources they will leverage to get to full day to meet the needs of families as required for the UPK plans due by June 30th, 2022 to their governing board. So it's not just what other funding sources they'll leverage, but who are their other partners? And so we want to emphasize that there's funding sources that may be within the LEA, but there's also partners. You've got partners outside within your LEA, within your district, and outside of your district. And so kind of keeping those options in mind. Next slide, please. So let's dig a little deeper into how to choose different models of service delivery for UPK that complement TK investments. The California State Preschool Program and Head Start can provide additional funding, but they are both income eligible programs. So, you know, that is something to consider that may lead to segregation of low-income families if they're standalone programs, right? So both of these programs could be standalone, or braided together or braided with TK programs. If they're braided in either way, CSPP has requirements such as the Early Childhood Environment Rating Scale, or ECHRS, and the Desired Results Developmental Profile, or the DRDP, that would apply as we covered in our previous webinar. Head Start grants include funding professional development, and if braided, could also benefit TK staff. There are comprehensive Head Start performance standards. For example, a classroom assessment scoring system, or CLAS assessment, would have to be conducted by an external source each year. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a preview of our next webinar, we're going to dive deeper into facilities, but we wanted to highlight this grant for you, the California Preschool, Transitional Kindergarten, and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program. Our friends over at the Office of Public School Construction joined a webinar earlier this month with some of the CDE team to present on the grant program. And we're going to paste a link here to that grant program in the chat here in a moment. But in terms of to think about, you know, eligibility, school districts and county offices of education may apply for this grant. School districts can also apply for the facility funding on behalf of charter schools who operate on district property. Funding may be used to construct or modify existing facilities. Applicants may apply for funds in advance of having a CSPP contract in place, indicating in the application for grant funding as a future contractor. It's something we've been working with the Office of Public School Construction to ensure that that option was available for our prospective state preschool program applicants. So for more information on this grant program, you can go to the link that was just provided in the chat. And again, we'll dive a little bit deeper in an upcoming webinar. And I think I'd like to see if Jennifer can join us for these next items.
You will use most of the remaining time to share some answers to frequently asked questions in the chat. So if you have a question, please add the Q&A feature of Zoom. If it is not answered during the webinar, it may be added to the FAQ webpage, which can be found on our FAQ page, which I will post in the chat. And after the Q&A will be.
Jennifer, we actually can't hear you, so I'm going to do my best to fill in here. So we're going to use we want to use the remaining time that we have here with you all to share some answers to frequently asked questions and some questions coming in through the chat. The chat, the Q&A feature of Zoom. Again, if it's not answered in this webinar, maybe it's something we may be taking back to respond to as an FAQ, and you can find our UPK FAQ page, which I think our team will post in the chat so that you can locate it relatively easily. After the Q&A portion, we will have a poll to help us develop our future UPK webinar. So please hang out with us until the very end. The first question it looks like we have is regarding charter schools and TK. And who can I ask to take this item?
I can take this one, Steve. So the question we got is, as a charter school, what are my requirements for UPK? So in terms of an answer, we're currently working on what the requirements for charter schools are around offering TK, and we'll be issuing additional guidance for charter schools. We do want to flag that all charter schools with kindergarten enrollment in 2021 and or 2019-20 that are still in operation this year will be receiving UPK P&I grant funds to plan for implementation of UPK. And it looks like from the web that the funding results have been updated now, because it says the page is last reviewed on Thursday, February 24th, which is today. So I'll put the link to that in the chat so you can check to see if you know, how those allocations have changed. I also know we got a question about basic aid districts and whether basic aid districts will be getting these UPK planning and implementation grant funds. Yes, they are. So just to quickly review the 200 million, there's a couple different pieces of it as a statutory formula that's based on kindergarten enrollment in 2021 and 19-20. And so that's what's determining the allocation. So anyone that meets the definition of an LEA that has kindergarten enrollment in those years, as specified in statute, should have a funding allocation for this on this page. And then I'll also put the link in the chat for the updated UPK countywide planning and capacity grant program amounts as well. And for those, the county offices are receiving $15,000 for each LEA in their county that's getting the P&I grant to help with the countywide capacity building.
Thank you, Virginia. Taking a look to see what other questions we may have identified to take live. There's a number of questions in here around the community partnerships and community engagement. And so again, we are, as you may see in the template, the template, and then the required questions, there are questions around those partnerships. And so those are things that CDE will be asking of LEAs in the survey that follows after the UPK planning template is presented by the LEA to us board at the end of this school year. And I think I see Virginia may have more on community partnerships.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So really wanting to take us back to the Education Code 8281.5, which does require pieces around that community engagement, and it lists specific folks that folks are required to plan with. So that's a really good piece to have handy as you're working on your UPK plan. So wanting to highlight that.
Thank you, Virginia. Let's see. I see there's a question in here. If you have not received data sent yesterday, so it would have been sent yesterday afternoon, where should we request it? So I think for more information on that, we would ask you to email the UPK mailbox, which is upk@cde.ca.gov.
And I'm seeing a question here on how CSPP would be interacting with community care licensing. So just wanting to clarify that if an LEA is operating a CSPP program and meets certain requirements like for kindergarten facilities, for example. That CSPP program, as long as it's serving 4-year-old children, can be exempt from licensing. If a district has a classroom for 3-year-olds and a classroom for 4-year-olds, the classroom serving 3-year-olds would be required to be licensed. So doing that. I also know there's some questions about CSPP eligibility because folks are thinking about how they can be blending CSPP to support UPK, especially since CSPP has some income requirements that TK doesn't. And one thing I want to point out for that is that districts can serve children in CSPP if the program is operating within the attendance boundaries of an elementary school where 80% or more of students are eligible for free or reduced price meals, then children can be served that are over the income threshold as long as the children from low income families are prioritized first. So wanting to flag that for those of you. I think there were some questions in the chat about that, as well as how children with exceptional needs that don't meet the income requirements can be leveraging that for a full day program. And so that's one option. I also want to flag that the governor's proposed budget would also take another look at some of those pieces around eliminating the income requirement for children with IEPs in the state preschool program. So we'll see if those rules and how they change July 1st.
Perfect. Thank you, Virginia. There's a few questions in here around private preschools, private programs, and partnering on UPK. We spent some time talking in this webinar about LEAs reaching out to their community partners, but we really do see this as a bidirectional approach, and so we would encourage private preschools, community-based organizations, other partners that we've identified here in the guidance. It's an exhaustive group of folks to reach out to the LEA, reach out to your LEA as well. And then I think I'd like to invite our Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction, Sarah Nepple-Morgan, from the Opportunities for All branch to speak to P3, preschool to third grade alignment.
Thanks so much, Steve, and hopefully I won't get kicked off again. So there have been some questions around how we determined what part of P3 to really focus on, and intentionally moving forward with a P3 that is not a prenatal to third grade, but really focusing on pre-kindergarten to third grade in our efforts here, at least currently. So as someone who actually originally was an infant toddler specialist and that did a lot with early mental health, I understand, and a lot of my team does, the value and the need around those investments in those really early years, starting with the prenatal phase. So not wanting to discount that importance at all, and knowing that the grades after third grade also matter as we look at children and how they go through an educational continuum. So it's true that research shows that the earlier the intervention, the better for children and the more worthwhile that return on the investment can be. But research also clearly points to the importance of sustaining those impacts. So we view our focus on pre-K to third grade as not ignoring the infant toddler in those prenatal years, but taking a very phased, focused approach within the broader system that currently lacks that alignment for our children. So that transition from pre-K into our K-12 system can be a really abrupt change for children and can either accelerate or interrupt the long-term impacts of early interventions and investments made in early childhood. So our hope is to focus on this, really address some of those key components in alignment that go from pre-kindergarten now into TK, K, first and second grade, and really have that part of the educational continuum be strengthened. This helps us look at promoting practices that intentionally build off children's academic and social emotional skills, which we know are really critical for later life success and well-being. By narrowing in on that pre-K to third grade, we are not only easing that transition for children, but we're also promoting the message that elementary schools can and should learn from preschool settings, so that kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms can be more nurturing, joyful, and developmentally appropriate environments for young students. So in spending this time focused on strengthening that pre-K to third grade system, we're really ensuring that any following efforts or investments made are sustained and not lost. So trying to keep that continuum going. All right, Steve, I think I can hand it back over to you now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think our the last question we're going to take, because we did, as I mentioned earlier, we have a closing poll that we were hoping we'd like to cover here. So I think for the last one, we've got an early admittance TK that I'm going to ask Virginia to join and speak to.
Thanks so much, Steve. So the question was, you know, can an LEA opt to include July 1 through September 1 birthdays in UPK before the final year of implementation? So on that, I want to flag that that they're not, you know, the statute defines ETK as whatever happens between the cutoff date for TK. Let's say this year, it's December 2nd, so it'd be December 3rd for the ETK, and the end of the school year, which is June 30th. So that's not to say that a district couldn't serve a child with a summer birthday in preschool. For example, if the child was eligible for state preschool, Head Start, a locally funded program that the district could operate to serve those child so that they're getting to UPK for all children before 25-26. But wanting to clarify that for all of you. We will be posting these slides on our website. We've shared the link for where those are going to be posted, and I think hopefully slide 11 will be a helpful visual for you to all to come back to on that.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Virginia. And I will ask the team to move us to our next slide, please. Thank you. Perfect. So as part of our next phase, we're going to talk a little bit about webinars and kind of what you can expect next. We've released one volume of guidance. We are working on the second volume of guidance to support the implementation of UPK with you know, internal and external partners to the LEA, and so thinking deeply about that broader early learning and care community. As we look forward at future upcoming webinars, which may also be helpful in writing and planning for UPK on March 4th from 10 to 11 a.m. So that's next Friday. It's already almost March. The Early Education Division will host a monthly webinar with an updated governor's budget summary and specific California State Preschool Program focus in certain areas. The next is on March 8th at 3 o'clock. Coffee with Patty, using the DRDP with specialized populations. This will allow you to hear more about how to use the DRDP assessment tool more effectively. A schedule for different dates and topics can be found on the draccess.org website, which I believe we will drop in the chat. If you didn't make it to last week's P3 webinar on building a robust, diverse, and well-supported P3 workforce, there is another one tentatively scheduled next month on supporting children with disabilities in inclusive P3 settings. And of course, this team is working on planning around spring breaks, thinking about what's coming up, and so well-deserved breaks on the next UPK webinar, which is tentatively on facilities, services, and operations. To sign up for any of these webinars, please sign up for the early education distribution list on the CDE website, at which we're putting the link in the chat. Thank you. And I will take us to our next slide, where we are going to do our final polling question, and second to last slide. So in this poll here, which should launch soon, we are going to ask you to choose up to 3 items. So after this webinar and hearing some live Q&A, what areas might you need more information on or technical assistance? Learning how to use the template, understanding requirements of UPK, funding opportunities, enrollment projections, focus area A, vision and coherence, focus area B, community engagement and partnerships. In other words, other learning and care providers, higher education. Focus area C, workforce recruitment and professional learning. Focus area D, curriculum, instruction and assessment. Focus area E, facilities, services and operations, and other. And we'll keep this open here for a little bit to give folks an opportunity to weigh in. So again, this is thinking about where as you've reviewed the guidance, you've heard in this webinar, in what 3 areas would you feel you could use more information or technical assistance? And I think we're going to give this maybe another 15 seconds or so, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll and then see where we are landing with this. All right, let's go ahead and close the poll so we can see the results, please. Thank you. All right, so as we look at the results here, it seems pretty close. Focus areas B, C, and D seem to be the top vote getters. So still seeing some interest in hearing more or getting some technical assistance so focus area B, community engagement and partnerships. Focus area C, workforce recruitment and professional development. And then focus area D, curriculum, instruction, and assessments. So at 41%, 38%, and 42% respectively. And then very closely followed by understanding the requirements of UPK. So I want to appreciate everybody's input on these, on sharing where additional TA could be useful. I think we are going to move ourselves to the next slide. All right. So this brings us to the closing of our webinar. We want to really appreciate the time that you all have taken today to join us, to provide your questions, to pose your questions. You know, as we look at UPK, we really see this as, you know, you hear the expression, it takes a village. That's absolutely true here when we think about UPK. And these internal and external partnerships are vital to doing UPK right and in a coherent preschool to third grade aligned system. So please join us for our next webinar. We've got on the side here our inbox for questions and comments, which you can find at upk@cde.ca.gov. We will post the webinar to the elementary grade spans webpage on the CDE website. You can find that at https:// www.cde.ca.gov/ci/gs/em/. And again, thank you all so much for joining us, giving up your time, your valuable time to attend this webinar. We hope you found it helpful. Our goal, as always, is to be as helpful as possible, particularly in what can be challenging times. Have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful rest of your week. Bye now.